The massive command ship Eternal Dominion floated in the cold darkness between stars. Inside its crystal-lined halls, Emperor Vexthul studied the reports with growing amusement. His 4 eyes glowed with satisfaction as he read about the latest discovery by his deep space scouts. "A primitive world, my lord," General Koran reported, his scaled hands working the holographic controls. "They call themselves humans. Their technology is laughably basic. They still use chemical rockets and metal projectiles." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among the Zephyrians. Around the War Council chamber, his advisors shared the same mirth. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered over 3,000 star systems in the past 5 centuries. They had crushed civilizations that could bend space and time. They had defeated species that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. And now, they had found a world where the inhabitants still fought with gunpowder weapons. "Show me their military capabilities," Vexthul commanded. The hologram shifted to display scenes captured from Earth's radio transmissions. The assembled Zephyrians watched humans in metal vehicles shooting at each other across muddy fields. They saw flying machines that moved slower than a Zephyrian warrior could run. They observed weapons that threw small pieces of metal at speeds that barely qualified as dangerous. "They have been broadcasting these signals for over a century," Intelligence Officer Thexara noted. "They seem proud of their conflicts. They document every war, every battle, every skirmish. It is as if they enjoy fighting each other." "Barbaric," Admiral Koran spat. "No wonder they remain trapped on a single world. They waste their energy fighting themselves instead of reaching for the stars." Emperor Vexthul stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. At 12 feet tall and covered in natural armor plates, he was an impressive sight even among his own kind. The Zephyrians had evolved on a harsh world where only the strongest survived. They had built their empire through superior technology and overwhelming force. "This world will make an excellent example," the Emperor declared. "We will show the galaxy what happens to those who resist the Empire. Send a single dreadnought to deliver our standard ultimatum. These humans will surrender quickly once they see our power." "A single ship, my lord?" General Koran asked. "Our standard protocol requires at least a squadron for first contact with unknown species." "For this?" Vexthul gestured dismissively at the hologram still showing human military exercises. "One ship is more than sufficient. These creatures fight with metal sticks and chemical explosives. They will wet themselves in terror when they see true power." The War Council erupted in clicking laughter. The idea of using their full military might against such primitives was absurd. It would be like using a star destroyer to swat an insect. 3 days later, the dreadnought Sword of Dominion dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. The ship was a kilometer long and bristled with energy, weapons capable of cracking planets. Captain Zexoth smiled as he looked down at the small blue world spinning peacefully below. The humans had no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no plasma cannons. Their most advanced satellites looked like metal boxes with solar panels. It was almost sad how helpless they were. "Begin the transmission," Captain Zexoth ordered. The message went out on all frequencies, translated into the major human languages by the ship's computers. The ultimatum was standard Imperial doctrine: surrender immediately and accept integration into the Empire, or face complete annihilation. Below on Earth, chaos erupted in government buildings around the world. Emergency sessions were called. Military leaders gathered in war rooms. Scientists scrambled to analyze the alien technology hanging over their cities. But something unexpected happened in those first crucial hours. Instead of panic, instead of despair, something else began to spread among the human population. Videos started appearing on their global communication network. Soldiers grinning as they cleaned their weapons. Engineers working with fierce determination on mysterious projects. Citizens volunteering for military service with enthusiasm that bordered on excitement. The alien transmission had been clear. They had 72 hours to surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. But as those hours ticked by, the response, taking shape on Earth, was not what the Zephyrians expected. Captain Zexoth received reports from his monitoring stations. Human military bases were buzzing with activity. but not the frantic activity of a species preparing to flee or hide. This was organized, purposeful, almost eager. They are mobilizing their primitive forces. His tactical officer reported. Shall we demonstrate our weapons to speed their surrender? Not yet, Zexoth replied, studying the readings with growing confusion. Let them exhaust themselves with their pointless preparations. It will make their defeat more crushing. The deadline approached. The human governments finally provided their official response. It came from the United Nations building in New York, broadcast simultaneously across all human communication networks and beamed directly to the alien ship. A human male in formal dress stepped up to a podium. Behind him stood representatives from every nation on Earth. But instead of the terror or desperation the Zephyrians expected to see, the human was smiling. Not a nervous smile or a diplomatic smile, but the kind of smile a predator might wear when cornering prey. To the representatives of the Zephyrian Empire, the human began, his voice calm and steady. We have received your ultimatum and given it the consideration it deserves. Captain Zexoth leaned forward in his command chair. This was the moment of surrender. Soon he would have another conquered world to add to his record. Our response is simple, the human continued, his smile growing wider. We decline your generous offer of slavery. As for your threat of annihilation, the human paused and his grin became something that made even hardened Zephyrian warriors feel uncomfortable. We invite you to try. The transmission continued, with something that chilled the Zephyrians to their core. The human reached into his jacket and pulled out an old projectile weapon, the kind their intelligence reports had dismissed as primitive and harmless. He held it up for the camera. You see this? This is what my great-grandfather used to kill fascists 70 years ago. We have been preparing for this fight our entire history. We have been waiting for someone worthy of our full attention. The human's eyes gleamed with something the Zephyrians recognized but had never seen directed at them. Predatory anticipation. Come and take it, the human said simply. Then the transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Captain Zexoth found himself staring at a dead screen, trying to process what he had just witnessed. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever responded to imperial ultimatums with anything but fear or desperate defiance. But this human had looked directly into the camera and smiled like he was about to unwrap a long-awaited gift. Sir? His tactical officer asked nervously. Should we begin the orbital bombardment? Captain Zexoth continued staring at the screen, where the human's confident face had been moments before. Something cold was growing in his stomach, a feeling he had not experienced since his youth on the harsh Zephyrian homeworld. For the first time in his military career, Captain Zexoth was beginning to wonder if the Empire might have made a mistake. Admiral Karan stood on the bridge of his flagship Imperial Wrath, watching the holographic display with growing irritation. The human deadline had passed 3 weeks ago, and still the Empire had not acted. Emperor Vex Thul had been furious about Captain Zexoth's report and had ordered a proper military response. 50 ships should be more than enough, the admiral muttered to himself. It was a minor pacification fleet by imperial standards, designed for dealing with civilizations that showed more resistance than expected. For a species that still used chemical propellants, it was massive overkill. His tactical officer approached with the latest intelligence reports. Sir, our deep space sensors are detecting unusual activity in the human solar system. Koran glanced at the data streams flowing across his screens. Define unusual. Massive construction projects, Admiral. They appear to be building something in orbit around their planet and on several asteroids in their system. The energy signatures are confusing. The Admiral frowned as he studied the readings. The humans were indeed building something, but the signatures made no sense. Their technology should not be capable of the power outputs his sensors were detecting. Probably some desperate defensive measures, he decided. Primitives always try to build walls when they face superior force. It will not save them. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, maintaining proper formation as they approached the small blue world. Koran had conquered 47 star systems during his career. He knew how this would unfold. The humans would see his ships and realize the futility of resistance. They would surrender or be destroyed. Either outcome was acceptable. But as the fleet moved deeper into the system, the sensor readings became more disturbing. What the humans had built was not the desperate fortifications Koran had expected. Orbital platforms surrounded Earth in precise geometric patterns. Asteroid installations dotted the system like a defensive network. Most troubling of all, everything was exactly where it would need to be to create overlapping fields of fire. "Admiral," his intelligence officer called out, "we are receiving another transmission from the humans." The message appeared on the main screen. It was the same human who had delivered their rejection of the Empire's ultimatum, but now he stood in what appeared to be a military command center. Behind him, dozens of humans worked at stations that looked far more advanced than anything in their previous intelligence reports. "Admiral Koran of the Zephyrian Empire," the human began, somehow knowing exactly who commanded the fleet. "Welcome to our solar system. I am General Martinez, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces." Koran's mandibles clicked in annoyance. How did this primitive know his name and rank? "We know you have come to demonstrate your power," Martinez continued. "We appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate ours in return. Please proceed with your attack. We are eager to see what the mighty Zephyrian Empire considers impressive." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in confused silence. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever invited attack. They begged, threatened, or tried to negotiate. They did not issue challenges. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "I am detecting movement among the human orbital installations. They appear to be repositioning." On the tactical display, the objects that had appeared to be defensive platforms were moving. Not drifting or adjusting position, but moving with purpose and speed that suggested active propulsion systems far beyond what human technology should possess. "Sir, should we proceed with the demonstration bombardment?" his tactical officer asked. Koran studied the display for a long moment. Something felt wrong about this entire situation, but he could not identify what. The humans were clearly primitive. Their initial transmissions had proven that. Yet they were behaving like they possessed secrets the Empire's intelligence had missed. "Target the military installation in their Nevada desert," he finally ordered. "Single plasma burst. That should convince them of our superiority." The flagship's main cannon charged with a whine that resonated through the ship's hull. The burst of superheated plasma streaked across space toward the human facility, carrying enough energy to vaporize several city blocks. But something impossible happened. The energy beam struck the installation and simply disappeared. Not absorbed, not deflected, but consumed entirely, as if it had never existed. "What just happened?" Koran demanded. His science officer frantically checked his instruments. "Admiral, the energy readings show the facility somehow absorbed our weapons output completely. There is no damage visible." Before Koran could respond to this impossibility, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. His tactical display exploded with new contacts as the human defensive platforms revealed their true nature. They were not stationary installations at all, but warships unlike anything in Imperial databases. The human ships moved like predators closing for a kill. They accelerated at rates that should have turned their crews into paste, yet somehow maintained perfect formation. Worse, they were fast. Faster than anything the Empire had encountered. "Sir, we are being targeted," his weapons officer reported, his voice climbing toward panic. "Multiple targeting systems. Admiral, I count over 200 weapon locks from just the nearest group of ships." "Impossible," Koran snarled. "Return fire. All ships, engage the enemy." The Imperial fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids sent torrents of energy toward the human ships. Missile barrages that could devastate planets streaked across space. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize worlds, but the human ships simply were not there when the weapons arrived. They moved like ghosts, sliding between energy beams with impossible precision. The few shots that did connect sparked harmlessly off energy shields that appeared far more advanced than anything the humans should possess. Then the humans returned. Fire. The first railgun projectile punched through the shields of the heavy cruiser Domination like they were not there. The tungsten slug, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, cored the ship from bow to stern in a microsecond. The cruiser simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of plasma and debris. "Shields down!" Someone screamed on the communications channel. "They are cutting through our shields like paper." More projectiles followed, each one finding its target with mechanical precision. The human weapons were not the energy-based systems the Empire used, but solid projectiles accelerated to incredible velocities. Against them, Imperial shields and armor proved woefully inadequate. But worse than the railguns were the directed energy weapons that followed. Beams of coherent energy that seemed to bend space itself carved through Imperial ships like knives through flesh. Hull plating that could withstand plasma bombardment melted like ice under a torch. "Admiral," his communications officer called out desperately. "We are receiving surrender requests from 18 ships. They are requesting permission to withdraw." Koran stared at his tactical display in horror. In less than 10 minutes, half his fleet was gone. Ships that had conquered star systems were being destroyed by humans who should still be throwing rocks at each other. "All ships, retreat," he finally managed to order. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." The surviving Imperial ships fled the Earth, system in complete disarray. Behind them, the human vessels did not pursue. They simply maintained their positions, watching the mighty Zephyrian fleet run like frightened children. As his flagship limped away from the battlefield, Admiral Koran tried to process what had just happened. The humans had not just defeated an Imperial fleet. They had done it with casual efficiency, as if they had been expecting exactly this type of attack. The most disturbing part was not the advanced technology the humans had somehow developed in secret. It was not even their devastating weapons or impossible ships. It was the way they had fought, like they had been waiting for this moment, like they had been preparing for war against a superior force their entire existence, and like they had enjoyed every moment of it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of receiving Admiral Koran's panicked transmission. Representatives from the major powers gathered in the crystal chambers of the neutral station orbiting Nexus Prime, their faces showing various expressions of disbelief and concern. Ambassador Thisara of the crystalline hegemony was the first to speak, her translucent form shimmering with agitation. "Explain to us again how a pre-spaceflight civilization destroyed half an Imperial fleet." Emperor Vexthul stood before the assembled delegates, his normally imposing presence diminished by the humiliation of his recent defeat. Behind him, holographic displays showed the wreckage of his ships floating in Earth's solar system, testament to a battle that should never have been possible. "The intelligence was wrong," he growled, his mandibles clicking with suppressed rage. "These humans possess technology far beyond what our scouts reported. They have ships that move faster than our sensors can track, and weapons that cut through our defenses like they do not exist." Elder Morden of the ancient hierarchy leaned forward on his floating throne, his ancient eyes glowing with interest. "Show us these weapons." The holographic display shifted to show recordings from the battle. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human railgun projectiles tore through Imperial ships with devastating efficiency. They saw energy beams that seemed to ignore the laws of physics as they carved through armor plating designed to withstand stellar phenomena. "This is impossible," whispered Lord Commander Vexkai of the Void Collective. "No species develops such advanced military technology without first achieving interstellar travel. It violates every pattern of technological evolution we have observed. Yet the evidence is undeniable," Ambassador Thisara noted. "The question now becomes, what do we do about it?" Emperor Vexthul straightened to his full height, his armor plates bristling with barely contained fury. "We destroy them completely. I am mobilizing every ship in the Imperial fleet. These upstart primitives will learn the price of defying the Empire." "Wait," Elder Morden commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless millennia. "Before we commit to a course of Total War, perhaps we should learn more about these humans. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring their communications since the battle. The results are troubling. New holographic displays materialized, showing intercepted human transmissions from the days following the battle. The delegates watched recordings of human news broadcasts, military communications, and civilian conversations. What they saw defied every expectation they had about how a species should react to first contact with a hostile alien empire. In the recordings, humans were not cowering in fear or celebrating a desperate victory. They were analyzing captured Imperial technology with frightening efficiency. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers eager to join the fight. Industrial facilities were converting to war production at a pace that suggested they had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Most disturbing of all were the intercepted communications from human military leaders. They spoke of the battle not as a triumph against overwhelming odds, but as a field test for weapons systems they had been developing for decades. Play the transmission from their military command, Elder Mordun instructed. The hologram shifted to show the interior of what appeared to be a human military facility. A woman in uniform stood before a tactical display showing the positions of ships throughout their solar system. She was speaking to other humans, unaware that alien intelligence networks were monitoring their communications. The railgun performance exceeded expectations, she was saying. Penetration was complete on all targets. The directed energy weapons showed some power fluctuation, but nothing critical. Overall, I would say the Zephyrian technology is about 50 years behind our current defensive capabilities. The human officer paused, then smiled in a way that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Begin production of the Mark 7 systems. If the Empire wants a real war, let us give them something to remember. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. They speak as if they have been preparing for this war their entire existence, Ambassador Thisara observed. How is that possible? They have been isolated on a single world for their entire history. That is not entirely accurate, Elder Mordun replied slowly. Our historical analysis shows that these humans have been engaged in almost constant warfare with each other for thousands of years. They have been testing military technologies and tactics against themselves since before most of our civilizations achieved spaceflight. You mean they have been using their own species as test subjects for weapons development? Lord Commander, Vexkai asked in horror. More than that, the Elder continued. They have been conducting a multi-millennium military research program. Every war, every conflict, every battle has been adding to their collective knowledge of warfare. They have been preparing to fight a technologically superior enemy without even knowing such an enemy existed. Emperor Vexithul snarled in frustration. It does not matter how much they have prepared. They are still one primitive world against the might of the Empire. I will gather every ship, every weapon, every warrior we possess. We will turn their solar system into a graveyard. That might not be wise, Elder Mordun warned. We have detected massive construction activity throughout their system since the battle. They are building something. Our long-range sensors suggest they are preparing defenses on a scale that defies belief. Let them build their toys. Vexthul spat. The full Imperial Armada will crush whatever pathetic defenses they construct. But even as the Emperor spoke those words, he could feel doubt gnawing at his confidence. The humans had already proven that their pathetic defenses were, anything but. They had destroyed his ships with weapons that seemed to violate known physics and tactics that anticipated every Imperial strategy. Ambassador Thisara stood, her crystalline form catching the chamber's light. The hegemony will be monitoring this situation closely. If the humans prove to be a threat to galactic stability, we may be forced to intervene. As will the collective, Lord Commander Vexkai added. A species capable of such rapid military advancement represents a potential threat to all established powers. Elder Mordun remained silent, but his ancient eyes glowed with something that might have been anticipation. He had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over his millennia of existence. Something about these humans reminded him of another species from long ago, one that had changed the galaxy forever before disappearing into legend. As the council session ended, and the delegates departed to their respective domains, one question lingered in all their minds. What else were these humans capable of? In the depths of space, human construction crews worked around the clock on projects that would have seemed impossible just months before. Earth's solar system was transforming into something the galaxy had never seen before. A fortress system, designed by a species that had spent its entire history learning how to kill efficiently. The humans were no longer just defending their world. They were preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson about the dangers of underestimating a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Emperor Vex Thul stood on the command bridge of his personal dreadnought Galactic Dominion, gazing at the massive fleet assembled around him. 3,000 warships filled the space around the rally point, representing the full military might of the Zephyrian Empire. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in Imperial history, enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. "My lord," Admiral Koran reported, his voice still carrying traces of the humiliation from his previous defeat. "All fleet elements report ready for hyperspace jump. The target coordinates are locked in." The Emperor's 4 eyes burned with cold fury as he studied the tactical displays. This time there would be no mistakes, no underestimation of the enemy. The humans had surprised them once with their hidden technology, but the Empire had learned from that defeat. Intelligence reports showed that while the humans had built impressive defenses, they were still limited to a single star system. They had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. "Begin the jump," Vexthul commanded. "Today we finish what those primitives started." The fleet translated into hyperspace as one massive unit, reality bending around them as they crossed the galaxy toward the small solar system that housed humanity's homeworld. In the Emperor's mind, this was more than a military campaign. It was a restoration of imperial dignity and a demonstration to the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire remained the dominant power. But when the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, what they found waiting for them defied every expectation. The solar system had been transformed. Where once there had been empty space and a few primitive satellites, now there stood a fortress complex that sprawled across millions of cubic kilometers. Orbital platforms surrounded Earth in multiple defensive shells. Asteroid bases bristled, with weapon emplacements. Most disturbing of all, the space between planets was filled with structures that could only be described as weapons platforms, each one larger than an Imperial dreadnought. "How is this possible?" Vexthul whispered, staring at the displays in disbelief. "Our intelligence showed they were still a single-world civilization. Where did all this come from?" His science officer worked frantically at his station, trying to make sense of the readings. "My lord, the construction appears to have been completed in less than 2 months. The scale of industrial capacity required it should be impossible for any single planet to achieve." Before the Emperor could respond, new contacts began appearing on the tactical displays. Ships were emerging from hidden positions throughout the system, but these were not the same vessels that had defeated Admiral Koran's fleet. These were larger, sleeker, and their energy signatures suggested technology that surpassed even Imperial standards. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the humans." The main screen activated to show the same human who had delivered their original rejection of Imperial demands. General Martinez stood in what appeared to be a command center that hummed with technology far beyond anything the Empire possessed. Behind him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the Imperial fleet with perfect accuracy. "Emperor Vex Thul," Martinez said, his voice carrying the same casual confidence that had infuriated Imperial commanders. "Welcome back to our solar system. I trust you brought more ships this time. The last group provided excellent target practice, but we were hoping for a more challenging engagement." The Emperor's mandibles clicked with rage. "You speak boldly for a primitive who is about to watch his world burn. Surrender now and I will grant your species a quick death." Martinez smiled, and once again that expression sent chills through hardened Imperial warriors. "Oh, I think you misunderstand the situation. You see, we have been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Your first attack taught us everything we needed to know about Imperial technology and tactics. Now we get to field test the countermeasures we have developed." The human gestured to his tactical displays, and the Emperor realized with growing horror that the humans somehow had real-time intelligence on every Imperial ship. They knew the fleet's composition, formation, and even individual ship capabilities. "How? Do you have access to our fleet data?" Vexthul demanded. "We have been monitoring your communications since your first ship arrived," Martinez replied casually. "Your encryption algorithms are quite primitive. We broke them in the first few minutes. We know the capabilities of every ship in your fleet, the experience level of your commanders, and even your tactical doctrine." The transmission shifted to show recordings of Imperial ships in action during previous conquests. But these were not recordings from Imperial databases. These were captured by human intelligence networks that had somehow penetrated the Empire's most secure systems without anyone knowing. "You have been studying us," the Emperor realized. "Studying, analyzing, and preparing," Martinez confirmed. "You should understand, Emperor, that humanity has been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. We have faced enemies with superior technology, greater numbers, and better positions. We have learned that the key to victory is not having the biggest weapons, but understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves." As if responding to some unheard signal, the human ships throughout the system began moving. But this was not the chaotic movement of a species preparing for desperate defense. This was the coordinated advance of predators who had studied their prey and knew exactly how to kill it. "All ships, attack formation," Vexthul roared. "Destroy them, all." The Imperial fleet opened fire with everything they possessed. Plasma cannons that could crack moons sent torrents of energy toward the human positions. Missile barrages that could devastate planets streaked across space. The combined firepower was enough to turn entire star systems into cosmic debris. But the humans were not where the weapons struck. They moved like ghosts, their ships sliding through space with impossible grace. The few shots that did connect sparked harmlessly off energy shields that seemed to bend reality around them. Then the humans struck back. The counterattack was unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Instead of the overwhelming firepower they expected, the humans used precision. Each shot was calculated, each target selected for maximum strategic impact. They did not waste energy destroying entire ships when disabling key systems would achieve the same result. Imperial ships found their weapon systems surgically removed by particle beams that cut with medical precision. Their engines were disabled by projectiles that somehow passed through shields and armor to strike critical components. Their command centers were targeted by weapons that seemed to phase through hull plating like it was not there. "Sir, we are losing ships faster than we can track," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "They are targeting our command vessels specifically. They know exactly which ships to hit to disrupt our formations." The Emperor watched in growing horror as his magnificent fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans were not just defeating them, they were demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that made Imperial strategies look like the fumbling of children. "They are not fighting to destroy us," Admiral Koran realized suddenly. "They are fighting to capture us. Look at the damage patterns. They are disabling our ships, not destroying them." As if to confirm his observation, human boarding craft began attaching to disabled Imperial vessels. The warriors who emerged from those craft moved with mechanical efficiency, overwhelming Imperial security forces and taking control of ship after ship. "My lord," his communications officer called out desperately, "we are receiving surrender requests from over half the fleet. They are requesting permission to abandon ship." Emperor Vexthul stared at his tactical display, watching 3 centuries of Imperial naval power being methodically neutralized by a species that should have been extinct. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had made it look easy. "All ships," he finally whispered into his communication system, "withdraw to emergency jump coordinates." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The humans had anticipated even this final desperate move, and their ships were already moving to intercept the fleeing Imperial vessels. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 3,000 star systems, was about to be defeated by the inhabitants of a single world. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from every major power in the galaxy sat in stunned silence as they watched the recordings from the Battle of Sol. 3,000 Imperial warships had entered the human solar system in the largest military operation in recorded history. Less than 6 hours later, the Zephyrian Empire had effectively ceased to exist as a galactic power. Ambassador Thisara of the Crystalline Hegemony was the first to find her voice. "Show us the final engagement again." The holographic display replayed the last moments of the battle. Emperor Vexthul's personal dreadnought, surrounded by the few surviving Imperial ships, had made a desperate run for the hyperspace jump point. Human vessels had moved to intercept with movement so precise they seemed choreographed. The engagement lasted exactly 17 seconds. The human ships had not destroyed the Imperial flagship. Instead, they had disabled its engines, weapons, and shields with surgical precision. Then, as the galaxy watched in disbelief, human boarding craft had attached to the Emperor's vessel like parasites claiming a host. "They captured him alive," Elder Mordoon observed, his ancient voice carrying a note of something that might have been admiration. Emperor Vexthul, conqueror of 3,000 systems taken prisoner by a species that achieved spaceflight less than a century ago. Lord Commander Vexkai of the Void Collective shifted uncomfortably in his floating chair. What are their intentions? No species in galactic history has ever defeated an empire of such magnitude and then simply stopped. They should be demanding tribute, claiming territory, asserting dominance over their defeated enemies. That is what makes their next transmission so interesting, Elder Mordoon replied, activating new holographic displays. The image that appeared showed the same human command center that had become familiar to galactic intelligence services, but now it bustled with activity that spoke of a civilization rapidly expanding its capabilities. General Martinez stood before cameras that the galaxy now knew were broadcasting to every major power simultaneously. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying the same casual confidence that had marked all human communications. 3 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire attacked our solar system with the intention of conquering or destroying humanity. As you have undoubtedly seen, that effort was unsuccessful. Behind Martinez, holographic displays showed Imperial prisoners being processed through what appeared to be holding facilities designed more for guests than captives. Zephyrian officers were seen receiving medical care, food, and what looked suspiciously like comfortable accommodations. "We want to make our position clear to all galactic civilizations," Martinez continued. "Humanity has no desire for conquest or empire. We are content to remain in our solar system and develop our civilization in peace. However, we will not tolerate aggression against ourselves or our allies." The transmission shifted to show something that sent chills through every military commander in the galaxy. Human shipyards were working at full capacity, producing vessels that incorporated the best Imperial technology, but improved with human innovations. Production rates that should have taken years were being completed in days. "To those who might, consider following the Empire's example," Martinez said, his smile taking on that predatory quality that had become humanity's signature expression. "We invite you to study the historical records of this engagement. Learn from the Empire's mistakes. Understand that humanity has spent 10,000 years learning how to fight wars against superior enemies. We are very good at it." The transmission ended with an offer that stunned the galactic community. Humanity extended an invitation to peaceful trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense pacts to any civilization that approached them with honest intentions. But the terms were clear. Any aggression toward Earth or its allies would be met with the same response the Empire had received. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched in fascination as a new order began to emerge. The collapse of the Zephyrian Empire had left a power vacuum that dozens of smaller civilizations rushed to fill. Border wars erupted as former Imperial territories fought for independence or fell under the control of rival powers. But none of that chaos touched Earth's solar system. The humans had established what they called a defensive perimeter, extending several light years from their homeworld. Any ship entering that space was met by human patrol vessels that politely but firmly escorted visitors to designated meeting points. The first diplomatic missions arrived within a month. The crystalline hegemony sent a science vessel filled with their finest researchers, eager to understand how humanity had achieved such rapid technological advancement. The Void Collective dispatched a trade delegation, hoping to establish commercial relationships with a species that had proven capable of innovative manufacturing techniques. Most surprising of all was the delegation from the ancient hierarchy. Elder Morden himself had come to Earth, traveling farther from his homeworld than he had in over 1,000 years. The meeting took place aboard a human orbital platform that served as their diplomatic station. Ambassador Chen, representing Earth's newly formed Department of Galactic Affairs, greeted the ancient being with the same casual professionalism that had become humanity's trademark. "Elder Morden," she said with a slight bow that somehow conveyed respect without submission. "We are honored by your visit. How can humanity assist the ancient hierarchy?" The elder studied the human ambassador with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "I come with a question that has troubled me since your victory over the Empire. How did a single world develop such advanced military capabilities without any outside contact or assistance?" "Ambassador." Chen smiled, and Elder Morden recognized the same expression that had unsettled emperors and fleet commanders. "The answer is simple, Elder. We had the best possible teachers." "And who were these teachers?" "Ourselves," Chen replied. "For 10,000 years, humanity has been engaged in almost constant warfare, not because we are inherently violent, but because we lived on a world with limited resources and multiple competing civilizations. We learned to fight, not by studying ancient texts or theoretical scenarios, but by facing enemies who wanted to destroy us completely." She gestured to holographic displays showing human history, images of battles and conflicts spanning millennia. "Every war taught us something new. Every defeat showed us weaknesses to correct. Every victory revealed strengths to exploit. We have been conducting a multi-millennium research program in military science without even realizing it." Elder Morden nodded slowly. "You turned your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. Your isolation forced you to become self-reliant. Your conflicts made you innovative. Your struggles prepared you for challenges you never knew would come." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "And now we offer that knowledge to the galaxy, not as conquerors seeking to impose our will, but as partners seeking mutual prosperity. We have learned that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from turning them into allies." As if to demonstrate that philosophy, the next visitor to the diplomatic station was someone who shocked the galaxy, former Emperor Vexthul himself. The once mighty ruler of 3,000 systems now served as a consultant to human military researchers, helping them understand imperial technology in exchange for comfortable quarters and respectful treatment. "They defeated me completely," he had told his former subjects in a broadcast that reached every corner of the fallen empire. "But they treated me with more honor than I had shown any of my own prisoners. They seek knowledge, not revenge. Understanding, not domination." Within a year of their victory over the Empire, humanity had established trade relationships with 47 civilizations, defense pacts with 12 worlds, and cultural exchange programs with species across the galaxy. Their solar system had become a neutral meeting ground where former enemies could negotiate peace under the protection of a species that had proven capable of enforcing their neutrality. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed conflict itself. The humans had demonstrated that victory did not require the complete destruction of one's enemies. They had shown that strength could be used to create rather than destroy, to build alliances rather than impose dominance. As Ambassador Chen stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching ships from dozens of different civilizations, arriving for a galactic peace conference, she reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, humanity had been unknown to the galaxy. Now they were becoming the mediators, the neutral party that others turned to when conflicts needed resolution. "Ambassador," her aide called out, "we are receiving a priority message from the outer perimeter. A fleet of unknown ships has entered our defensive zone. They claim to be refugees from the Andromeda Galaxy, seeking sanctuary from something they call the Devourer Swarm. Chen turned from the window, her expression shifting to the focused intensity that galactic diplomats had learned to recognize and respect. Prep the defense fleet for full alert status and send word to our allies. It looks like humanity might have found its next challenge, to be